Everybody, 12 beers of Christmas. We're here at Arbeiter Brewing Company before opening on a wintry day. Here with Josh and Aaron. Josh is a co-owner, former Northern Brewer, co-worker. Aaron is head brewer, also former Northern Brewer, head co-worker, as I said it out loud. We're drinking Pfeffernusse Winter Warmer, a beer that started as a home brewery at Josh's home brewery, and now it's a commercial beer at Arbeiter. So a very spicy beer, influenced by German dessert.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
Talk me through.
Correct, yeah.
Talk me through. I guess we'll start with Josh real quick. Just like, what was your idea when you first made this many years ago?
I think it's just one of those things where I had never brewed a winter ale or spiced winter ale, and I really liked Summit's winter ale, and so that was kind of like in the back of my mind the whole time. And then I knew the brewery was going to be on the horizon, or it was on the horizon, and it was going to be
Nice.
a reality someday. And so I was just kind of playing around with different concepts of German influences and American style beers. And so I remember this Pfeffernusse cookie thing as part of the traditional holidays. Kind of grew up, spent a lot of time in the great, what do they call it? The sauerkraut pyramid or triangle of North Dakota, South Dakota.
Oh.
I botched that, but it's a real thing.
They call it a sauerkraut kettle or triangle?
Triangle.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Like the Bermuda Triangle, but sauerkraut.
A lot of German influence and heritage.
I feel like I'm messing that up, but
Or the Emerald Triangle.
we'll fact check that.
California.
We'll fact check that later. So yeah, I just kind of looked up some traditional Pfeffernusse recipes, and I picked a spice blend based on one of the online recipes I found, and just did it from there. The difference was back then I made a tincture out of the spice blend. You'll see in this recipe, we put it in the boil because
Okay.
we can't use tinctures here.
Oh.
That's a no-no.
Yep.
But so the way I dosed it back then was just in the pint glass itself until I got the ratio I liked, and then I dosed the keg.
Oh, okay. So we should say, if you don't know what Pfeffernusse is, it literally means pepper, nuts. It's a treat. It's a cookie. I mean, it gets rolled into a ball very often, so it's not necessarily a cookie. Traditionally, they'll have like cloves, cinnamon, black pepper, nutmeg, anise or anise oil. We even talked about how they'd have chopped citron in some versions, like a little kind of lemon zesty, lime peely kind of influence. So talk me through the spices that made it all the way to the Arbeiter version.
Sure. Did you mention black pepper?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, good. 'Cause that's, I think, a pretty integral portion of the Pfeffernusse spice blend is black pepper. Aside from the black pepper and sometimes orange, what I was kind of realizing was the blend itself is pretty similar to like either a chai blend or a pumpkin pie, spice blend with cinnamon, clove, ginger, nutmeg, allspice, some star anise potentially. I did squeeze a little star anise in this one, just for depth of flavor. So I think Josh's, if I remember right, was mostly just like cinnamon, ginger, black pepper, allspice.
Yep. Some clove.
Maybe some clove too, yeah. And I squeezed in just a little tiny, black pepper into.
Yep.
And yeah, I added the star anise, and I think I'm not sure if you had clove in yours, but yeah, I didn't add much more beyond what Josh had.
And it all went at the same time at some point in boil.
It just all went in at which is on the recipe that we can provide. The last 10 minutes of the boil, I just used all ground spices, and the overall quantity of which is kind of just determined on a little bit of trial and error and experience brewing at this scale. So when you want to brew it at home, you just kind of have to have a feeling for what volume of spices works well for you on your system and your volume. So.
Yeah, for reference, I took terrible notes. All I could do was find the recipe that influenced my spice blend, and Aaron was able to break out the percentages from there.
Classic homebrewer stuff.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding.
I lean much more subtle in my personal tastes. I typically don't like anise anything, but Aaron convinced me to turn up the spice level a notch, add some anise and some clove, and
About 2% anise.
I think he nailed it. So
I think it works.
Tell me about the beer it went into. We've talked about the spices, but what is this beer? It's pretty interesting in itself.
Totally. Kind of like strong amber. Well, it's a rye ale,
Right.
really. For what, maybe in total about 20% rye, and I believe Josh's homebrew version had it like closer to 25 or maybe even 30%.
it was probably
rye.
closer to 30. I was
Yeah.
kind of obsessed with rye back then.
And again, based on experience at brewing at this scale and on this system, I didn't really want to go quite that high, so I whittled that back a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit, yeah, whittled it a little bit. As I also whittled back the quantity of Special B, which, yeah.
Helps it
Without-
kind of be a little drier, spicy vibe, which is nice. It's not as
Yeah, between the rye and the spices
Raisiny dense.
themselves, I was worried about it kind of being perceivably too dry. So, yet there's a lot of big caramely malts in here. So I was kind of, just taking things into consideration as far as like finishing, gravity, and related mash temp. So I didn't want the beer itself to get too dry. I didn't want the caramel malts to be too caramely. So it was just kind of like man, I hope this all kind of comes together with what I'm feeling is going to happen. And it pretty much finished for me right where I wanted it to.
And there's a fair amount of candy sugar in it too, so that helps dry it out a bit.
They're giving us the recipe with percentages, like professionals often do, including kind of like the spice blend in percentages, so you can make kind of a bulk spice blend and then kind of flavor it to taste, I guess. It's obviously, if you're doing it in a boil, a little harder, so maybe go light in the boil, and then if you need to, tincture or secondary.
That's actually what we did too. I used like about 2/3 of what a volume at which I thought was going to work in the boil. So if needed be, we could have flavored it more.
Yep.
Like later on, like in secondary, so to speak. But yeah.
And in the end, how do you feel about it? It's funny you say chai, because it drinks kind of cold chai a little bit, but not directly.
Yeah, I mean, it's got a lot of cinnamon. Like cinnamon accounts for like 40% of the spices in the blend. So, yeah, it does have a little bit of a chai-y type flavor, I guess. It's got a nice black pepper kind of pop, I feel like, in the middle of like the spice blend profile. It does have a nice kind of caramely malty finish. I'd say it's fairly balanced overall from start to finish. Nice spice blend in the nose. Spice blend, spice flavors up front in the sip, and then, like I say, kind of a nice caramely, but not cloyingly, caramel malty finish.
It's not unlike gingerbread. And last year I was told black pepper is also kind of a secret weapon in gingerbread recipes, so it's kind of interesting that also is something that you're pointing out is fairly essential and a bit higher than you might even think.
Right.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's offensively spicy at all. It's still a beer. You'll have some winter warmers that are spicy with no spice just because of the hops,
Sure.
yeast esters, so. What say you, Josh?
It looks beautiful.
It looks beautiful.
Love that color.
Mahogany fireplace
Yeah.
vibes.
You guys already took all the words out of my mouth, so I'm gonna leave it at that.
Well, they're going to provide the
It's
recipe.
exactly how I imagined it. So
That's awesome.
Good. They're going to provide a homebrew recipe. I'm going to actually provide these two recipes for Pfeffernusse and white Pfeffernusse from this basement cookbook called From Our German Ancestors. Goodness knows who I'm supposed to credit for that, but I have a feeling
Your
it's probably
German
public.
ancestors.
It's probably public domain
Sure.
at this point. I'll credit my grandmother Lois and great aunt Gert. It was given to her in 1985 from the Gloria Dei Lutheran Church. Or day. I'm not sure what that word is. All right, man. Well, Merry Christmas. Thanks for bringing a beer to the party.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Cheers.